Welcome to the Smart Dating Academy podcast. I'm Bela Gandhi, the founder of Smart Dating Academy and your host. I started Smart Dating Academy in 2009 because I had this crazy knack of giving people dating advice that actually worked, that I took. I've been married for almost 25 years, and now my company helps people to date smarter and to find love. This podcast is meant to bring more love into your life, no matter where you are and what you do. And we're here to bring more life into your love. Smart daters, welcome back to the podcast. Today, I am so excited to have with you a neuropsychotherapist. Her name is Britt Frank. She's the author of The Science of Stuck. And you guys know, if there's something I am passionate about, it's getting yourself freaking unstuck so that you can achieve everything you want to in your life. You can achieve your dreams. Hell, you can achieve love, because you know that's what we're all about at Smart Dating Academy. So Britt, welcome to the podcast. With no further ado.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Oh my gosh. And if you guys are wondering, okay, who is this person? Britt went to Duke. She's got her master's from the University of Kansas. She's an award-winning adjunct instructor and the author of The Science of Stuck, published by Penguin Random House. So she's kind of a big deal. So we're very grateful to have you here today. So first of all, what is a neuropsychotherapist and how do you differ from a therapist?
Yeah, this was kind of horrifying for me to discover as a client in therapy that therapists aren't required to learn about the brain. Wait, what? They're not? No, they're not. Neuropsychotherapists are trained in brain-based like EMDR or somatic work, but like you can become a licensed therapist and never once learn about your brain or your nervous system. And that is kind of wild. And it's important people know that.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So we've had some interesting somatic healers on the podcast, and I'm such a fan of this work, 100%. So, okay. So tell us, what is trauma and what's our trauma response? Like, let's just go there.
Oh, we are in it. Okay. So the thing with trauma, which is so funny to me, that we have over-indexed on trauma culturally. It used to be that nobody was talking about the 3-pound lump of salt and fat and electricity and water in our heads, AKA the brain. And nobody was talking about trauma, to our detriment. And now everyone has trauma and everyone's a narcissist and everyone is a gaslighter.
Yes.
And I'd rather us be talking too much about this stuff than not enough. But when it comes to things like narcissism, gaslighting, trauma, it's helpful if we have a definition that we all agree on. The definition that I use comes from people way smarter than I am who've studied this and ad nauseum. Trauma, simply put, anything that's too much, too fast, or too soon for our brain. And I call it brain indigestion, because that's really what it is. Now, I've had some angry DMs where people are like, that's minimizing to survivors of trauma. I'm like, listen, I have childhood sexual trauma. I have adult assault trauma. I have trauma every which way up to Tuesday for me, not for everyone, but for me. And I'm saying trauma's brain indigestion. I don't think it minimizes the pain or the reality of what people go through. To call it what it is, it demystifies it. It takes the stigma off of it. No one thinks twice when they get food poisoning that they're going to puke their brains out. Trauma's the same way, except the vomiting looks like anxiety or depression or stress or whatever else it may be. So trauma is anything that is too much for our brains to process. Why? I don't know, because brain's brain, because genetics, because environment, because who knows what, but that is what it is.
I love that. And if you're okay going there, you mentioned you've had your own trauma. Tell us what you're able to with regards to how this informed the line of work that you're in.
It's so funny. People tend to get into the healing modalities, either out of they've, done some work on themselves and they've healed everyone, or they're so altruistic and they want to be of service to humanity. I did not fall into that category. My thing was, my life was such a chaotic mess. I dated the same person over and over. I was in really, really high level capital T trauma kind of relationships. And I thought the problem was me. I'm like, oh, my picker's just broken. I just, I don't know how to pick the right partner, and it's just me, and da 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 da. I didn't know that my trauma history was very much informing my dating choices and my life choices and my work choices. So after, I don't know, 10 plus years of banging my head around on life, I finally got my feet under me. And then in my early 30s, I went back to graduate school and became a therapist. So I did not enter this career from I want to help. It's I need help. And now I've gotten help. And now I have some fun things to share.
I love that. Sometimes I think from our deepest wounds, we can be of deepest service to people. So it sounds like you fall into that category. Like, at a certain point, we pull the oh shit lever on life. And that's the inflection point that sort of goes, wait a second, I'm going to turn the mirror around and look at myself and say, okay, the common denominator in a lot of what's going on is me. So I need to unwind this and what happened to me and why I'm doing the things I'm doing.
Exactly. And the I'm the problem, it's me thing gets very victim blamey. I went there. I'm like, clearly I'm the problem, but I didn't understand what that meant. And really, I wasn't the problem. The injury to my brain, and even if you don't have trauma, like high level trauma, our brains get conditioned and patterned to seek out the familiar, not the healthy. Our brains are not wired for love. They are wired for survival, and they're wired for pattern recognition. So if you grew up with these really not ideal suboptimal relationships, your brain's going to be programmed to seek those out. And it's not that you don't have the responsibility to manage it, but it's not a personal weakness. None of these things are about character or weakness.
It feels comfortable to your nervous system.
Exactly.
To seek out dysfunction, right? If you grew up in a dysfunctional household with one or two caregivers that sucked, right? Let's just go there. Or bless their hearts, they did the best they could for the parenting that they got, right? And so that will have a profound impact on the things that you do. Romantic relationships, friendships, the way we respond to our bosses at work, the way we respond to everybody. So I'm so glad you're here to help us unwind this. I like this. It's too much, too fast, too soon, brain indigestion. And it can be something that some people would call not so significant, all the way to sexual trauma, physical abuse, and all of the things.
Exactly. And the too much, too fast, too soon is not my definition. It's Dr. Peter Levine, who pioneered somatic experiencing, which is a trauma healing modality. And it's such an accurate descriptor. Like you said, not everything is going to traumatize us, but things that you wouldn't think of as traumatic have the potential, just like any food has the potential to give you indigestion, any experience has the potential to give you brain indigestion.
I love that. And how has this helped you personally?
Well, I am married now to I call him a normie. He's never had an addiction. He has really as healthy as you can get while still being human, parents and siblings. I'm like, who are these people? I was so uncomfortable dating a healthy person that I had to kind of dip back into intensive therapy in order to help my brain reorient to what it meant to be in a healthy, intimate relationship. But we have a good time now.
Oh, I love that. Congratulations. I mean, so much of what we do is focused on exactly that at Smart Dating Academy. It's wrapping bubble wrap around our clients that have some sort of trauma and protecting them from making those bad choices again. Good on you. You got yourself into therapy, and because of your education, you knew, hey, Houston, we have a problem. I'm not going, this feels like I want to cut bait and run. So we become you can't cut bait and run. Maybe he feels a little boring right now. This is really good for you. Let's give it a few more dates. Let's see how this goes. Because when you're with someone who's secure and normally you're like, oh, it's so boring. Does that resonate with you?
not just boring, but dysregulating. It's like, this is a man who, when he's done, he goes. When he's tired, he sleeps. When he's hungry, he eats. And so if I'm like, hey, do you want to get together? And he's like, no, I need a night alone. I'm just, how dare you? This is true even in our married life. I get it now, but it's everything. I was like a live wire with no insulation. I love the bubble wrap analogy, because every healthy thing he did registered to my system as abandonment or rejection or whatever. And I learned in this relationship that skillful adult humans can argue without yelling. I grew up in a yelling house. I came from a history of yelling relationships. And I was like, oh, wait a second. There are tools that, I don't like the word normal, but just for, tongue in cheek, I say normie. There are tools that normie people use that render us completely capable of both feeling anger without yelling, feeling sad without trauma dumping. Holy shit, boundaries. Wow, what a concept. Oh, sorry. Can I swear on here?
Yeah, for sure. And it's like learning how to use your voice and understanding, and I work with our clients on this all the time. Conflict isn't inherently bad. You have to put new lenses on about conflict and look at conflict as a way to deepen your relationship and to increase your skills at successfully navigating through it without throwing the microwave at your partner, without screeching out of the driveway, right? We don't have to repeat what we've done. There are skills that you can do, and look at conflict as a way to get you to a better place. Wow, we disagreed on something. It's more like a speed bump. I can get over that versus, oh shit, I got to drive my car off the cliff right now.
I love that. And really, the medicine for conflict is curiosity. When you can stay in a curious place, even in the midst of conflict, the logical parts of your brain stay lit. And then we can use all these wonderful skills. As soon as your logic brain switches off and you're in that fight, flight, defensive, like, you're my partner, but I want to claw your face off and I'm saying everything I'm thinking, then the curiosity thing goes away. So as long as you can maintain one toe in curiosity, conflict is one of the price of admissions to intimacy.
Absolutely. You mentioned, being with the normie and how it sort of even dysregulated you. Tell me about, in general, how can this kind of trauma that's still in our bodies, how can it manifest itself in dating and relationships in general?
It can manifest in any number of ways. One of the most common ways it manifests is through symptoms: anxiety, stress, overthinking, overworking, overindulging on whatever chemical or behavior is your thing, So those are the obvious ones. And again, people are like, but I don't have trauma. Let's forget, don't call it trauma then. Let's just look at, how's the relationship working? Is everything that you're seeing in the dating world a repetition of the dysfunction? Then don't worry what we call it. Let's talk about what it is. And that comes to your choices. With me, I was able to repair, they call it the arousal template, which is a very clinical way of saying, who are you picking? Who are you drawn towards? And you can sit down and consciously work with your sense of choice, your choice power, that you don't have to choose into that. But first you have to identify your patterns and then identify your choices, and then start with whether or not you call it trauma, your brain got a little dinged up. And if not, it wouldn't be manifesting in your relationships.
I love that. Your brain got a little dinged up, and we need to heal your brain. And we don't talk about our brains as healable.
Right. And what we know about neuroplasticity is that the brain is not a static thing that is unchanging. Your brain is constantly learning and growing, and you can train it to do new things. Now, again, to the degree that people have safety and access to resources and, levels of privilege are going to inform what some people are able to access versus others. But that's not an internal problem. That's a systemic problem. But your brain can change. You can teach your brain. I used to be addicted to drugs. I am no longer addicted to drugs, and I don't identify as an addict. That is not this is who I am for all time. It was both good news and bad news to learn that I could be in charge of changing my brain, because I was in this is just who I am. Therefore I have no responsibility to change it. eek. I was pissed off at my therapist when she's like, no, you actually have choices here. We can change the pattern. We can change the wiring. And no one can do that for you. Like, that's the one thing the machines will never replace the internal work necessary to have healthy external relationships.
Oh my God. How do we rewire our brains?
Well, again, we need to
Small
know
question. No,
like easy peasy. Rewiring your brain starts with really a commitment to honesty with yourself, about yourself. Because even for people that aren't in trauma responses or reactions, a lot of times relational conflict is because of incompatibility. Like, I'll give you an example. I am a hardcore introvert. Like, I can do the things, but I get my energy from alone time. My husband is a hardcore extrovert, and he needs an exceeding amount of peopling time. We don't have high conflict there because he's happy to go out by himself or with his friends. I'm happy to stay in and be alone or whatever. But if I was with a partner that expected me to join them, that would be a high conflict situation. So in order to find compatible partners, we have to start with, who am I? How am I wired? Like, I'm not a texter. I would never work in a relationship with someone that wanted to text me all day. I'm like, don't talk, like, call me if you need me, but I don't like to text. And my husband doesn't text either. So again, that's it's not right or wrong. It's just, what are you about? Like, if you're listening to this, it's like, what are you about? And we don't approach our dating life like an architect. You don't build a house without a blueprint. Why in the world would we think that jumping into the dating pool with no plan is going to yield good results? I mean, I tried that. It didn't work.
I love that. No, you're so right. It's funny. A friend, in fact, someone I had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, Carly Holden, she was texting me. And we were talking. She's like, you should watch Rewired by Joe Dispenza. I'm like, oh, okay, we can rewire. I was like, wow, okay. The onus is on us. There's so much that we can do. And I loved this because I think you're saying, and I'm saying, it's like at a certain point, you're like, wow, the responsibility is on me. But ladies and gentlemen, guess what? The steering wheel is in your hands. Isn't that amazing? Look at this from a place of, oh my God, I have the power to change my actions, my responses, my thoughts, my feelings. I can do this. Is it easy? No. Is it possible? Yes. I find that so liberating.
I love that so much. And I didn't actually answer your question of how do you do it. So if you think of your brain, I'll go back to that. If you think of your brain as primarily a pattern like it looks for patterns. So the way to interrupt the pattern seeking thing is to break patterns in easy ways. So in other words, our brain is set to autopilot, like that's what it likes. And so think about how often we're on autopilot when we get ready in the morning or when we're driving home at night. Change the things that are easy. Change the pant leg you put on in the morning. Change the road you take to work. Change the stations that you listen to, and that will start shaking up the snow globe of the brain. And that's where you can loosen things up and start rewiring. But in order to rewire, the first step is break the patterns.
Interesting. So breaking even, let's say, food addiction or drug addiction patterns, obviously, but even small things, you can start to rewire your brain and the patterns that we have that can help with small things and big things.
Yeah. And I say that as someone who uses crystal meth, like this works with crystal meth. And it works with revenge bedtime procrastination when you know you need to go to sleep, but you're doom scrolling till 3 a.m. It's the same thing. Our brains get stuck on loops of differing severity, but a loop is a loop. And the first way you can break it is just change the path. So here's an example. If you're sitting on your laptop on the couch and it's getting late and you're just sort of stuck on like a YouTube loop, like lift the computer over your head and move side to side for 2 seconds. That's going to interrupt your pattern. Switch which side of the couch you're sitting on. That's going to interrupt your pattern. And I remember when I worked in drug rehab, one of my clients was like, this is dumb. Like, how am I supposed to quit my heroin addiction by changing which pant leg I put on? I'm like, you start small, because when you start small, you get a sense of I can choose, I can do this, which then gives you a little hit of dopamine, which then builds up and gives you what you need to do the bigger things. Like, we can't make big moves until we fill the tank. our tanks are filled with small wins, little I call them micro yeses. It's like, you may not be able to change the thing, but what can you say yes to right now in service of changing anything? When you say yes to any degree, to anything, you are no longer stuck. Stuck becomes unstuck the second you find a yes of any size.
I love that. So even little things. So you, dear listener, maybe put a different shoe on tomorrow. And you probably, what I find so fascinating in listening to you right now, Britt, is I don't even know the scripts that exist in my brain. I don't know what pant leg I put on first. I don't know what shoe I put on first. I don't know. Wow, I always drive this way. And there's so many things I can't remember. Gosh, like sometimes you sit in the shower, you're like, okay, did I wash my face or not? And then I'll do it again because I'm so unconscious of what I'm doing. So maybe it's take the soap in your left hand and become conscious of what you're doing, because it's going to feel really friggin' weird because I'm a right-handed person.
Exactly. And using your non-dominant hand to do things it's one of my favorite exercises because it's so easy to do. It will immediately jolt your brain out of autopilot. And again, whether your goal is quitting drugs or finding a healthy partner or going to the gym or whatever, launching a business, we have to start by interrupting autopilot, AKA this unconscious way we're sort of floating around through life. Because again, choice power, the ability to respond instead of just reacting, only happens when you're conscious of what's happening in your body and in your mind. And my favorite part about this is, like, have you noticed we've been talking for, 20 minutes, and nowhere in here do we need to figure out what happened to you in your childhood? Like, well, why is this a problem? Why is the most counterproductive question to start with? Now, I'm an analyst by trade. I get asking why is important, but it's not a first step task. Like, if a building's on fire, you're not going to sit there and be like, I wonder why this building caught on fire. It's like, get out of the damn building. Or
right.
I went surfing for the first time last year, and it's like, you don't ask, why is this wave so big? You just like duck under or get on your board. We'll figure out why later, after you get to shore, after you get out of the building. But why is this like this is just not helpful. Start with why is fantastic if you're starting a business, like Simon Sinek's work. I love, like, deep respect. Start with why is horrible if you're stuck in a behavioral pattern, or you're on a procrastination loop, or you're in an unhealthy intimacy cycle. Start with why is completely useless. Why is a mile 6 question, not a mile 1 question?
Absolutely. It's funny. I did some work on, why do I eat even if I'm not hungry? And I've always struggled with my weight, 20, 25 pounds here or there. And the why was, well, your parents didn't provide you with comfort in the moment and they didn't feel safe. So, and which is great and fine. And I love that because I don't know that I knew that. But now it's the now what?
Exactly.
Now what do you do with that? So yes. So if the building's on fire, it might be great if you're the engineer to know why and where the fire might have originated from. The rest of us just need to run. So what are you going to do in the face of 10 cookies being in front of you? Do you feel like you have to eat every single one to clean your plate? Or can you do something, have a cookie with your left hand and break it into 10 pieces? Not that easy to do.
And I love that example because historically I've had lots of different eating disorders. I've had like the over stuff and the under stuff and the restrictive stuff. There are some days where 10 cookies on the counter, they're going to get eaten. Like, I know once I'm on I am a monster right now.
I'm a terror.
Yeah. Exactly. But what do most people do? They eat the cookies and then it's, well, what's the point? I just blew it. So now I'm going to go out and eat 6 slices of pizza and have a bottle of wine. It's like, you go into autopilot. I know, me too. Like, fully me too.
Girl.
But
wait, do you have a camera in my kitchen?
But like, let's say you eat and I try to do this now. After I eat the cookies, I do not shame myself. I call this the follow your drunk friend around the bar exercise. Like when your girlfriend is wasted, like if you were in college and you're following her around to make sure she's safe, you're not going to logic with her. Yelling at her is not going to work. You just sort of hang out with her until she gets home. After you eat the 10 cookies and you're sitting on the couch in pain, don't yell at yourself. Just be like, yeah, I know that was a bummer. It's like, you know, it's going to be okay. I'm still here. I'm still going to take care of us. I'm still going to make sure that we wake up tomorrow. You know, I wonder maybe we can have a glass of water right now. Like, again, it's what's the yes, not screw it, I'll start tomorrow. It's what can you say yes to in the next 30 seconds? Because that will break the autopilot cycle.
Okay, I love that. So that's pattern recognition. Right now, I just ate the 10 cookies. My script would be have the pizza, have the wine. How do I interrupt the pattern in that moment?
So the pizza and the wine comes from the internal thought, screw it, I blew it, why bother?
Keep going.
You know, like I'll start tomorrow. That's a lie. Like that's a lie. That is not, one, you didn't blow it. Two, you're not going to start tomorrow. I didn't start tomorrow. None of us start tomorrow. That's like why the diet industry gets to exist, because we want to be honest. Well, honestly, if I'm looking at 10 cookies and I know I'm going to eat them, I will say, this is not going to feel good. I'll say this out loud too, because you can break autopilot faster when you speak out loud. My husband gets this now, but it's true because our heads are so full of so many things. When you say it out loud, I am going to binge today. And then you access your choice power. I don't feel very in control right now, but I know I'm going to eat these. So I'm just going to say, I'm choosing to eat these 10 cookies. And then once you're done, say out loud, what's my next choice? That'll interrupt the thought pattern of I blew it. It's like, that's not true. You can also ask yourself the question, how true is this thought that I'm thinking? Is there another possible option? Like, is it? If we're talking just calories in, calories out, 10 cookies is going to equal X, 10 cookies, 6 slices of pizza, and a bottle of wine is going to equal Y. So this thought of I blew it, what's the point, is not accurate. So get honest with yourself. Eat the damn cookies, but then find something to say yes to in service of choice power.
Right. And now, is there something we can look at the cookies? And I love saying it out loud. For example, if this were me, let's be honest, I could be the 10 cookie person. Could I look at the cookies and say, I know you want me to think that you're going to bring me joy and relaxation and comfort right now, but I know you're tricking me.
That's an approach, and that approach is useful. There's another approach that I use that I really like, which is instead of like looking at the thing and putting our attention on, because we always do that, right? We focus on the food, on the drug. I turn my attention inward, and like science has shown that we're kinder to other people than we are to ourselves. So talk to yourself as if you were a friend. Oh my God, Britt, I know that you think those 10 cookies are going to make you feel better. And you know what? They probably will for a second, but then honey, you're going to feel so sick. So I know you're hurting right now, but I wonder, maybe we have 5 of them, and then maybe there's another way we can figure out what's going on. But like, you can actually dialogue with the voices in your head. You don't have to shut them up. You don't have to banish them. Like, dialogue with them. It's weird and it feels awful. But again, that's good. Familiar is what caused the problem in the first place. So break the cycle by turning your attention inward and talking. I want that, like my PMS voice is, I want the cookies and I want the burger and I want the fries and I want everything. And then it's okay. Like, I hear you. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to shame. I was shamed as a child for wanting to eat junk food. Like, that's going to make you fat is what I was told. Like, no. I know that. And it seems like this is more, maybe this isn't just about the food, Britt. Like, did something bother you this week? Did something happen this week? Because again, none of these compulsions exist without a pain that's going untended. So rather than manage the behavior, let's tend to the pain.
Absolutely. You know, it's so funny that you say that. I said to myself last night, I was at my brother's house and they had this chocolate banana bread, which I brought, and I'm looking at it. And I had that like gentle parent moment inside of me that was like, you know, you remember, Bella, we talked about this. If you start eating that, in an hour, you're going to kind of feel not great about yourself, and you can be so mean to yourself. And remember, we talked about what gives you a lot of joy in those moments is learning something new. How about we go watch that video series right now instead? And if you still want the banana bread after that, we can have that. Worked like a charm.
Gentle parenting is not just for kids. It is for our voices in our heads. Like, I don't have children, which is probably good.
I do.
I
and
have
they're
so
teenagers.
many. Oh God. So, okay. Inner children, inner teenagers. My first career was as a play therapist because I wanted to see what do children actually respond to? Because it's these smaller, more childlike parts of ourselves that compel us to do the things that we don't want to do. Gentle parenting, we know with children is a much better approach. With teenagers, we know that unrestricted, unboundaried parenting doesn't work. And it's the same thing with ourselves, but neither does shaming. It's boundaries and conscious loving discipline and praising the good behaviors and reshaping and understanding the ones that aren't. So it's the same skill set. If you're a parent of kids, like, transfer it to your inner world, parent your parts.
I love that so much. So let's talk about, you're so good at so many things, but you have 3 steps to unstuck. Let's go there. And tell us concretely. We probably touched on a lot of them in the therapy session you just gave me. Thank you. So let's talk about getting unstuck in general. Maybe you too have food issues. Maybe you've got money issues. Maybe you have love issues, bad dating patterns. Let's talk about, how do we get unstuck?
Yes, and I love that. And this will sort of sum up everything we've been talking about. And again, this works whether you're recovering from childhood trauma or whether you're trying to break a habit, or it works on everything, which is, our life's not easy. Our problems are not easy. They're very complex, but this process is not rocket science. So again, people are like, this is so stupid. I'm like, I know. If I had known it was this simple, I wouldn't have spent 20 years as an addict and like a lot of money on therapy and school and training. So here are the 3 steps to get unstuck. Step 1, ditch the why. Like, I don't know why. It doesn't matter right now.
Who cares why the damn house is on fire? Get out of the friggin' house.
Right. It doesn't mean you don't matter. It means why is not the thing right now. Ditch it. Just leave it in the parking lot. Step 2, just leave it there. We'll get to it later.
God, I love you.
Step 2, make a list of 3 micro yeses. And again, to review, a micro yes is the smallest possible thing you're willing to say yes to. Not tomorrow, not next week, not after you buy the sneakers and the special pens. What can you say yes to in the next 30 seconds, 30 to 90 seconds? Then step 3, of that list that you just made, pick one and do it. Now, here's the kicker. After you do it, you can't beat the crap out of yourself. Oh yeah, well, a micro yes for working out might be, don't try to force yourself to take a walk. You're not going to, but maybe your micro yes is you walk to the door and then you walk back to the couch. And tomorrow you walk to the door, you put on one shoe, and then you walk back to the couch. Oh, well, yeah, all I did was walk to the door. What's wrong with me? That will completely your micro yeses won't work if you shame yourself. So step 1, ditch the why. Step 2, make a list of 3 micro yeses. 3, pick one, do it, and then give yourself credit. Like, you don't have to have a parade. Just be like, yay, I did a thing. And then you move on.
I love that. So let's go into an example. I am a dating coach, run Smart Dating Academy. My clients get frustrated with online dating. And they're like, I hate the apps. I don't want to go on. So let's say right now I'm feeling, I can't get on a dating app today. It just makes me feel awful. How do I get unstuck?
Right. I love that question because I hated the dating apps too. Like a lot. It's really overwhelming. So remember, a micro yes is not about big steps. And micro yes is, what are you willing to do? I'm not willing to get on the dating apps. Great. Then that's not one on your list. Are you willing to look for 3 live and in-person events that are happening in your town that week that you can go to? Like, apps are not the only way to meet humans. Like, you can meet humans any number of ways. So if you're not willing to get online, what are you willing to do? Are you willing to, if you do like the apps, but you're not wanting to get online, are you willing to update your profile? Are you willing to phone a friend? Are you willing to hug a puppy? It doesn't matter. What are 3 things you're willing to do in service of this goal? And if you can't find any, then shrink them down and make them smaller. Maybe you're willing to log on to your computer, look at the app, and then close it. Doesn't matter how small they are, but pick 3 things that you could do in the next 30 seconds. That would be a yes. And then pick one and do it. And the thing is you don't micro yes the whole way. You micro yes until you build momentum, and then you can take bigger steps, and then you can go further faster. And then you can sustain this road from here's what I want to what I actually have. And that gap is best bridged by microscopic steps forward, because your nervous system stays out of freeze when you do things that are teeny tiny small.
I love that. And I'm going to give you singles a tip on something that happened to me last week that gets to this. What are you willing to do? So let's go back to, I can't be on the apps for even a minute this week. Okay. And now a micro yes. I'm going to tell the people closest to you, your friends or your family, that you want to be invited to events, even if you're not invited. Basically, invite yourself. My mother called me. I was doing 2 events last week. I said, I'm going to a women learn how to play poker night at my son's high school. And she's like, oh, what are you doing on Thursday night? I said, oh, I'm speaking at the Women's Athletic Club in Chicago, the WAC. And she said, well, if I could go with you to either of those, I would love to. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I called the place where I was speaking. They're like, what an honor to have your mother join us. They comped her a ticket. She's 75. They took such good care of her. She said by Friday night, 24 hours later, she's like, I still haven't lost the glow of having been there, having watched you speak, and meeting all of these new amazing women. She basically called me and said, can I come? If you're single and listening to this, we so often feel like we have no agency. People don't want me at events. My married friends shut me out. What I want you to think about in your micro yes, pick up the phone and tell that person, hey, I would love to go to a dinner with you guys if you could bring me as a guest. I'm inviting myself. Be bold and say that and see what you get. My own mother did this to her own. And I just said to her, I didn't even know you wanted to come. I will keep my eyes open for more things that are good for you. Take my mother Renu's nugget and use it in your life. If you are single, invite yourself to things. Call up a friend and say, what are you going to in the next 2 weeks? And could I invite myself to go with you? I find it to be so enamoring. I would love it. How would you feel, Britt, if I called you and said, Britt, do you have any fun things I could literally just invite myself to with you?
I could not love that more. I love every single thing about what you said, because doing that breaks the patterns. Doing that gives you a jolt of agency. Doing that, you hit a lot of notes by doing that. And if calling the friend is too big, then your micro step is make a list of 3 friends that you could call. And then your next micro step is write the text and then send the text and find a way to say yes. I love that so, and I would be thrilled, because when we don't ask people for help, we rob them of the joy of giving help. I love being able to give to people, because when I was in my spin, people gave to me. I feel like it's incongruent if I don't have outlets in order to give. It's like a body of water needs an inlet and an outlet to stay alive. Otherwise it gets gross. So it's the same thing. People can't give if people don't need. So when you need it, take it. When you have it, give it. It's a very simple concept. I love that.
And interrupt the pattern, because we're all so self-conscious and we don't want to look desperate or thirsty. And Britt and I are here to tell you, it makes you look powerful and strong and self-aware, and you're appealing to our senses of wanting to help, which makes me, when my mom did that, it made me feel so good that she was like, I was like, oh my gosh, how brave of her to say, please invite me. I love that. And it made my desire to help jack up on steroids. And I made the call and couldn't have been happier. I picked her up and brought her with me because I was so delighted that she told me.
I love that so much. And, if you're worried about burdening your friends, that's not a really easy fix. Then in your text or in your call, just say, listen, no pressure. If this doesn't work for you, totally cool. But this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm wanting. If you know someone, if you know an event, if you know a thing, it's very, very easy to not burden people. You're not calling them up and saying, give me an invite or else. You're saying, this is something I'm wanting. This is where my head is at. And then their head starts thinking on your behalf. And it's very cool, the upcycle that happens with that process. Love that tip so much.
Absolutely. And you might get invited to something they're going to if you invite yourself, or they may not have anything, but you're right. They'll help you brainstorm certain things. Or, oh my God, my friend Kathy went to this singles meetup group for divorced women that she loved out in the suburbs. Let me find out from her where that was. And I'm going to connect you to so you can go with her. Boom. Okay. So that was a micro. I would say, you know what? That's a macro yes. Okay. So that is a big deal. So I love this. So take this with you to the bank, y'all. Go invite yourself or ask for help because we all want to help you.
I love that so much. And again, say yes to yourselves. It's like, well, how am I supposed to meet anyone if I'm just going to XYZ? It's like, go anyway, because you're going to be better positioned to be able to, it's sort of like when you buy a house, all of a sudden you see for sale signs everywhere, or, like when I needed to replace like a pipe or plumbing or whatever, I was hyper conscious of sink fixtures because there's only so much your brain can take in. So what you tell it to focus on, it will focus on. If you're programming your brain, keep on the lookout for opportunities to expand my life. Where can I say yes? Where can I ask for help? Your brain's going to start doing that automatically. And then suddenly you've got all these things on your calendar that are really fun and exciting. And then whether or not you meet someone, your life's going to get more fun and you're going to feel better, which then puts you in an even better position to spot and attract a person that would be compatible.
I love that. And this is very much called the red sweater effect, right? If I tell you to walk into a room and look for people wearing red, you're going to come back to me and say, Bella, 11 people were wearing red. If I said, Britt, how many people were wearing yellow? You're like, well, you told me to look for red, right? We look for what we become conscious of. Our brains have, as we've known, and you guys have heard me talk about this on the show before, we have a negativity bias, and that's wired into us. So we survive and we don't get eaten by the tiger or the grizzly bear, right? Like, ooh, what's that? We look at an angry face and we're like, ooh, I don't want to talk to that person. Here, what I want you to do is actively program into your head a positivity bias. As you're walking down the street each day, and this is just a fun exercise to do. I do this all the time. When you see people walking by, tell yourself something positive about that person. I bet that guy is a great uncle. He looks like he'd be so much fun. And I'm sure that he spins his nephews and nieces around and that like grabs one arm and one leg. And he's that uncle that everybody loves. That woman over there, wow, she's got a really interesting style. I bet that she looks all over really carefully to find exactly how her look should be. And I bet she gets a lot of attention everywhere she goes in a good way. Do this and interrupt the negativity in your brain that's looking for stranger danger. Instead, tell yourself good stories around people. And you know what happens? It's a very strange effect. I don't know if it's vibration, but when you start to tell yourself good things about people, it must change the energy we're giving out or the facial expressions that we have. But I've seen people walk up to me and say something nice to me when that happens. It's really weird. Can you explain that?
No, but I can validate that that's a thing and it happens. And I could explain it. I mean, what you're saying is absolutely what we know about emotions is that they're contagious and that emotions actually have like physical, if someone's angry, if you walk into a room, you can feel the tension, right? You can feel, and that's contagious. So if you're walking around with the negativity bias all day, I suck, I'm not enough, I'm never going to have the thing, whatever, that's going to show up in how you physically show up because, emotions are energy in the body. It's not just a concept. It's like emotions are physiological. So if you're trying to conjure up stories of possibility and curiosity and positivity, it's not about thinking positive. We're not saying ignore the pain. We're saying if you're going to be talking to yourself all day anyway, why not try to conjure up something possible, not even positive, but possible about the people around you? That's going to change your orientation. And again, we know emotions are contagious. So if you are giving off this energy of curiosity, it's very magnetic, not just with dating, but just with life. The energy of openness and expansion and curiosity. We like people that we feel are open to us. You know, people are just safer to approach when they're not all balled up and constricted and growly and walled off. And you can be open and curious and still have boundaries. My thing was, but if I'm open and curious, I'm going to be vulnerable to getting hurt. And it's like, not necessarily. That's not necessarily true. It doesn't mean be boundaryless and just have hours long, interactions with people, but curiosity. I wonder what that person might be good at. I love that so much. I wonder what, that person's story is. I really like their shoes. That does change your physiology, which then changes your emotions, which then changes how you're attracting and who you're attracting.
Absolutely. And being self-aware that, wow, this does give me pause. I'm nervous. Would somebody think I'm fake? Right. And being vulnerable is about being curious and also willing to exchange that information about yourself. Right. It's like, if I'm like, wow, Britt, I love those red patent shoes. They're so awesome. Where did you find those? I've been looking for a pair. Right. And then all of a sudden, then I'll be like, it's hard for me to find shoes because I have to wear a double wide because I have a bunion. So and all of a sudden we get into this conversation that now I've disclosed something that I don't often share. And you can be like, oh my God, my aunt has that. We've got these 3 amazing sites where we get her the most chic shoes, right? All of a sudden, look at that. And it's not me saying, wow, when I was 9 years old, my father, blah, blah, blah. That vulnerability without boundaries is oversharing, says
Yes.
Brene Brown, right?
Yes.
You don't want to go there, but just something that's interesting or intriguing about yourself.
I love that.
Fun
and
fact.
Even if someone's talking to you and they're interesting, it's amazing to me how rare people get told this and how I don't do it in a fake way. But if someone is saying something interesting, I will say, oh my God, you are so interesting, or that was so interesting. And people really like hearing that. And if you're not being fake, that's another way to connect, because we're all programmed to keep walls up. I may not necessarily want to date you or have you in my life, but if you're saying something interesting, I'll validate that that's interesting. Then we've created a micro connection. You might not be my long-term person, but that micro connection gives me a hit of agency and choice and dopamine. And then I can take that juice and drive wherever else I want to go.
Oh, Britt, you're amazing. I wish we could talk for another 8 hours. So we can order your book, The Science of Stuck. I'll put a link to Britt's book in the show notes, and any place else we can find more of you.
Oh my God, you're awesome. You're super interesting. I'm like, shoot, we're out of time. Find me on Instagram, where I have horrible boundaries. I'm on there all the time, and I don't have a team. It's just me. So come say hi. It's at Britt Frank. I'll be there. I answer all my DMs myself and all the messages myself, because I just love seeing the good that social media can do. I mean, it's a jungle, but there's also a lot of potential for real connection to happen out there.
I love that. And you use it for good.
Yes.
Right. And we're going to use it for social, not anti-social media. And you guys, if you love this episode with Britt as much as I did, go in, give it a 5-star rating, write what resonated with you. Okay. I read every single review and I will send you love, right? And I'll give you good juju. So that energy will come to you. So do that. It would mean the world to both Britt and me. And if you feel like you're stuck in the dating world, peak dating season is coming. Get excited. Don't look at it with dread. What can we micro and macro freaking yes ourselves to? Schedule a consult with us. Sign up for our newsletter at smartdatingacademy.com. Follow us on Instagram and share this podcast episode with the people in your life that need it, because who isn't stuck? Who doesn't have big T, little t trauma, brain indigestion? We're all stuck in some ways. Share this with someone who needs it, and good things will come your way. Until next week, I bid you farewell.